Does Microsoft have their AI mojo? You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's Alan Schimmel for the Techstrong Gang. We've got a great gang show for you. We got people all over the country, world this week at conferences, though they're not all here on Gang, but we've got folks over at Red Hat in Boston. We've got folks in Microsoft Build. Mitchell, I think, is there. And yet, wait, there's more. We've got other ones going on we'll be reporting on, throughout the week. But let me introduce you to who we have on board for today, as we got some interesting things to talk about. I mentioned he's out at Microsoft Build. He's a Futurum VP DevOps analyst, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, where are you, man?
I'm high atop my perch in Seattle, Washington. It's a temporary location, but
We're at the top of the needle. At the top of the
sitting
needle.
on the needle. Yes, anticipating more agentic AI any moment now.
All righty. Well, you got the lookout post there. Good for you. Thanks for coming on. I know it's early. We might as well stay out west, where he's probably atop his perch, at the Golden Gate Bridge. It's our Silicon Valley expert, John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you?
Good. So speaking of shows, I'm going to be making my way down to Google I/O in Mountain View, which is about 20 miles south of here. But then again, everybody's got a conference this week. It's crazy.
It is a conference-y week. All right, moving from there to I assume she's home in Atlanta, but maybe she's at a show too, and we don't know. Jules Okafor, your second time on. I hope the internet's working good. Looking forward to it.
We will see what it does.
No, you're not Atlanta. You're in Ohio, Jules.
Yes. I'm in Ohio.
No, it's working.
Definitely.
Why did I say I had Atlanta on my brain, but Jules,
I lived in Atlanta.
In the home of the Ohio State. Excuse me?
Yes, I'm in Ohio. But I've lived in Atlanta.
Okay, but I don't know why I had Atlanta on the brain. I'm playing geography today. But yes, you are in Columbus, Ohio. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Buckeye country. And then joining us from Canada.
The home of the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm sorry?
Yes, it is. He's a cybersecurity expert and longtime gang member, Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, good to see you, man. All right. So guys, let's jump right into it. Mitch, Microsoft's making a lot of noise with agentic AI. Everybody's making a lot of noise with agentic AI. But why don't you tell us what kind of noise is Microsoft making?
Well, I think it's more of a sonic boom than a noise. Microsoft has leaned into AI in a major, major way. It's kind of shocking, actually, a little bit of astonishing how much they have going on with AI. It isn't just a series of product announcements. I mean, they kicked off the conference with talking about the developer experience and what the developer's job is going to be of the future, and pretty much set the tone that we aren't going to talk about job replacements and how many developers are going to lose their jobs or whatever is going to happen, or how much code's being generated to replace them. It's really about Microsoft creating an ecosystem for building software, creating software agentically with AI, using new techniques and skills, but we'll get there. We'll get there together. So they're very much embracing the developer community, saying we're developers. That's our DNA. That's what we started as, and we're on this journey together. That's my paraphrasing of it, but essentially that's the message, which I think is an open question for developers. Like, what's going to happen to my job? Am I going to still have one, or is it all going to be AI? But behind that, they're kind of comprehensively really leaning into AI. They announced something called the NL Web, which is an ability to add a plugin or a service to your website. So now you essentially have natural language query ability into the content of your website. Something we talked about quite a while ago, Alan, with some of the Techstrong sites, which have already reached out to our folks and said, by the way, this capability is there now. So their vision is that the web, everything will have a natural language interface to it, as well as search engines and all of that kind of thing. But they're also leaning heavily into, of course, the developer experience. We got to meet with their EVP of Core AI. They're doing research around what the future of the developer experience will be. Of course, there's lots of product announcements. They're leaning heavily into MCP, the model context protocol that was created by Anthropic, and not only the releasing support for it, their own server, MCP server. They're partnering with Anthropic on working on continuing additions to the spec to level it up to enterprise grade MCP, because they really see that as, that's the thing. That's one of the linchpins that's fallen into the whole software AI native development that's gotten fire. Everybody's got an MCP server. That's because it's fashionable, because that's how AI connects to the world beyond the data that it has access. I could go through a laundry list of, GitHub Code Agent, Copilot Agent has gone to GA. Some things that they open sourced, which is Copilot for VS Code, they've open sourced that. There's a number of things that, it's just this constant stream, but all of it has, we are figuring out the future together. We want you to try all these early previews. We want you to tell us what works, tell us what sucks, tell us what we need to change, tell us how you're using it, and we will continuously innovate in a way that you don't see big corporations doing.
Interesting. Look, Mitch, me, you, John, Chris, Jules, you're a little younger than us, so maybe it hasn't been quite as long, but you as well have followed Microsoft for many, many years, right? For all intents and purposes, my whole career has been spent in an industry dominated by Microsoft, right? Probably more so back then than maybe even now, but nevertheless, Microsoft has been a constant. I live and work, our offices are right here in Boca Raton. Right down the block from us is what we call BRIC, the Boca Raton Innovation Center. It's actually the original IBM campus where they came out with the IBM PC. They developed the IBM PC. They still have the room there where Bill Gates signed the licensing agreement for DOS, right? Which really set Microsoft off on its way, right? Becoming the operating system for the PC. Now, there's two things Microsoft does really well that they never got enough credit for. Number one, their developer channel. Developers liked working with Microsoft. As much as the Linux heads kept saying this is the year of Linux on the desktop and Mac is more secure and this, that, and the other thing, Microsoft owned the developers. They did. And the second thing they never got credit for, they had a channel and still have a channel second to none. Their channel rules. I think the only thing close to them may be Oracle. But Microsoft, and Cisco had a good channel too, now that I think about it. But Microsoft's channel, play, partner ecosystem, amazing. So Mitch, when you tell me they are all in, putting all the wood behind the developer and their partner ecosystem, that is a sonic boom. That's hypersonic, right? And they're calling out, the heavy artillery here. And again, with everything else we're seeing, I just did a call this morning with Malaysia Telkom, their GPU is a sovereign GPU as a service. They went from 7 years ago having two 10 gigawatt centers, right? Now with AI, they just did a deal with Singtel, Singapore Tel. They're going to have 200, they had 10 megawatt. They're going to have 200 gigawatts because they're thinking AI and agentic AI is going to be this big in the APAC region there. Malaysia, Indonesia, Indochina, Singapore.
One of the things I would do want to point out about Microsoft, you and I remember certainly the Microsoft of old, sort of the Death Star. that, they dictated terms, they controlled it. If you want to work with Microsoft, you sign their agreement, whatever, they just expected you were going to, kowtow and bow, and or else you don't get to play. And I'm not saying that Microsoft isn't a behemoth; it still is. But there's very much a sense of, we can't do this alone. We're not going to do it alone. We're going to be doing open source thing. We're going to be collaborating with other companies. I mentioned the Anthropic, for example, but they aren't trying to. I think that the lock-in concern they recognize is a big issue. And in the world of agentic, they can't lock you in. It's one of the big concerns that kept coming up with developers here at the conference. And while they don't use the term lock-in, I think they're trying to address that. Now, I'm not saying, every vendor wants to lock you in if they could and keep your stickiness in their products and things. And certainly, Microsoft's no different in that aspect. But the Borg of Microsoft old is certainly not present, at least on the surface. Maybe some of that DNA is still running around inside the company, but it's a different Microsoft.
Can I use a basketball analogy? May I? I will try. And congrats to the Knicks, by the way. In a week where there are more AI agentic related announcements from the biggest companies, I think what Microsoft did, just given the breadth and the scope and the ambition of what they're trying to do, reminds me of Daryl Dawkins going in for a dunk and tearing down the backboard, like shattering it. I don't.
Chocolate Thunder, baby.
Chocolate Thunder, there you go, from Lovetron. But
died way too young, man.
yes. But in any event, though, in a week where we have Google, Microsoft, remember IBM a couple of weeks ago, they tried to make their imprint to some success. Dell, SAP. This one, and as Mitch pointed out, sonic boom is the perfect way to describe it. And I think they won the week. And we haven't even seen the full announcement from IO over 2 days. I feel that's right.
There you have it, from the czar of Silicon Valley himself. Microsoft has won the week. Quote him. Excellent. I agree with you, John. Wait. Chris has.
Yeah, I think when I look back at this period of my life, Q2 of 2025 is going to have this banner across the top. It's going to be, how I learned to stop worrying and love the AI, right? It is really fundamental. I hate to be such a, fanboy, right? And fall into, but it's everything we're talking about here. And the channels, Alan, is a perfect example. As someone who had a hand in Cisco's channels, the turn of the century, and trying to explain that to people afterwards, is we've been doing things so simply. Channels is really easy, but it's also complicated. It's a human thing. You have to actually think about the people involved and translating that into business terms. Even after making $3 billion of 90% profit through channels, turned out to be really hard. And this whole AI thing is just, be able to look at relationships faster. And actually, I've literally been doing this in the channels world in the last month or two, saying, here's the value. You can actually think through these things fast enough. And it's, I think, I'm willing to say and look back on this one and stand with this. This one is real. This pivot, this crux we're at, it's not just about this, that, or the other. This is business efficiency and efficiency in solving problems at so many different levels that, yes, serious, boring companies like Microsoft are making these sort of statements and investments. That's how big it is.
Absolutely. Jules?
I wish that they didn't correlate the rise in AI to these massive layoffs. I think that's the one thing that is evoking concern in me. It's for me, Microsoft has been doing this for a while, and the other tech companies, the PR of it could be wonderful. Look how we're able to make humans better with this new technology. Instead, we're going to lay you off because we've got the new AI technology, which means people are afraid to embrace. So I think that what I would hope that next step is not only Microsoft um, distributing this technology, acting as a leader, but showing how they can keep people and they can introduce technology to make their people more efficient, less burnt out,
More productive.
right? So that would, I would say they did. I would say they've won the week, but I think that they also made a statement when they initially came out and made that big investment in OpenAI. We knew this was coming. They were going to get what they could out of this investment. And I was excited then, and I'm still excited now.
You know, that's an excellent point, Jules. That's a really good point because remember a few days earlier, Microsoft had that their biggest layoff in several years. They're announced, I think there's going to be about 6,000 layoffs. And I think that's something that we should keep our eye on with all the investments these companies are making into AI in terms of operating expenditures. They're not going to be the last company, the last big tech company to pare their payroll.
No,
It's coming.
and not
Oakley,
just tech companies,
it's
not just tech
everybody
companies. I'll tell you
is
something.
going to do it.
So I think here's the sequence from Microsoft. They announced a fantastic quarter. They had a fantastic quarter. And they said, we had such a great quarter, we're going to lay off 6,000 people. But that's the mentality. We're going to get leaner. We're going to get leaner. This was a lesson coming out of COVID. Companies have been able to, they found out that they can get leaner and still do more. Whether it's AI that's empowering that or something else, they can be leaner and still do more. We can do 25% more with 15% less. And it's counterintuitive, doesn't seem to make sense, but you're seeing companies across the board do it. Now, I happen to see an announcement from Chase yesterday, JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. They're going to lay off over the next, I forget how many years, maybe 10% of their workforce, 10% trimming. And they also, Jules, to your point, cited AI as a reason why they're going to be able to do it.
I think also, though, the release of DeepSeek at the cost and at the speed made people realize that we have too much, management, too much fluff that I think we need to get rid of in order to scale faster. And I think that that's had a huge influence on how fast they think they should be moving. It actually made them want to move even faster, which means to them, labor is slow. We need technology for speed, unfortunately.
So in my first comment, for those Dr. Strangelove fans out there, that was what I meant. This is a pivotal time. I know these tools will solve a lot of problems. Oh my gosh, that's just amazing. Now, they may cause some as well. And Jules, you're exactly right. Messaging from companies at this time right now, please, folks, get that right. Let's not make the downside more likely.
We shall see. All right, let's take a break here on the gang. We're going to come back, and Jensen Huang is keynoting a conference. Shocking. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, we're back here. So our friend Jensen Huang is keynoting multiple conferences as part of this hectic conference week. But he's not just, he's not, I was going to say he's not an empty suit, he's not an empty leather jacket, I guess is a better phrase for Jensen. But John, what are we hearing from the Pied Piper of Nvidia?
So the globe-trotting Mr. Wang has made his way from Riyadh, where he appeared with a bunch of tech CEOs and the president for his Blackwell giveaway chip day. He showed up in Taiwan at Computex, which is a major technology show, and they announced a ton of product announcements, something on the par of Microsoft, but I don't think with as much influence because they do this so often. They talked about a next generation GB300 AI systems that highlight their efforts to fuse GPUs and CPUs into connected design for faster training and inference of AI models. They said they are now going to let other chip makers adopt its proprietary NVLink technology through a variant called NVLink Fusion. And some of those partners will include Marvell, Qualcomm, Fujitsu, and MediaTek. They also announced a DGX Spark AI workstation. They showed robotic play that they're going to do. They're also announced that they are going to be working with Foxconn on and the Taiwan government to build an AI factory supercomputer that will deliver state-of-the-art Blackwell infrastructure. They made a ton of announcements, and he again is everywhere. He's the Pied Piper of AI, and he sprinkles his magic dust wherever he goes and makes his imprint. But in a sense, what's interesting to me about Nvidia is they do a lot of announcements. They do about 3 or 4 big announcements a year, and usually there's always something new or original or something that advances the game. And I marvel at their ability to do so. I think, and it just occurred to me, they do a better job of creating the narrative about what this technology is, what it means to other people, and where it's going better than anyone else. And everyone's along for the ride with them, seemingly, in terms of partnerships.
You're 100% right, John. You know, for all intents and purposes, they've done an amazing job of, when you think AI, think Nvidia. More so than think OpenAI or Anthropic or Microsoft or IBM or any of these things. When you think AI, you think of Nvidia. And so kudos to Jensen and the whole team there. Beyond that, though, at the same time, with these announcements, they're thinking, how do we move Nvidia beyond the GPU when you think AI? Right? So it's tying it to CPUs. It's developing that software ecosystem, right? And look, there was a time where Intel used to do this really well, right? Their optimized chipsets and everything. You know, back in the day, it was the Wintel monopoly, as we called it. But I mean, certainly, Nvidia seems to be doing just fine doing this, and they're pulling in other hardware makers in addition to software. Mitchell, thoughts? Rest of the panel?
No, I think you're spot on with Nvidia. They are just a juggernaut. That's my description of Nvidia, because they just seem unstoppable, even when their stock price takes a hit, or, you know, we don't know if we can have enough water or power on the planet to cool every Nvidia GPU. Somehow Jensen sells 3 more data centers, you know, across the world this week, and it's the next biggest of, you know, anything that's been done. And of course, we don't talk enough about the software side of it. People are now doing more agreements with Nvidia of integrating their software. I think it was Dynatrace just did one announcement about embedding or integrating their observability capability into the software frameworks that you build AI applications. So, you know, they're quietly building up the fortress of software to you know, their competitive ranks as well. So it's impressive. It's, you know, from a gaming company with really cool boards putting in my PC to play the latest game to where we are now is just phenomenal. It's hard to believe.
It's funny that you say that, Mitch, because Jensen Huang basically made a comment, because we've come from being that gaming company to 90% AI company. That's just who we are now. And he emphatically made that point. And I think in terms of messaging, they are really good. And I'm going to make a really bad disclosure about myself, that I'm still kind of kicking myself. So they have this incredible infrastructure behind the scenes to create content. I turned them down for a job about 8 years ago.
Didn't come with any stock grants or options, did it? Oh, John. John, I'm losing respect for you here. Well, look, we all come to the fork in the road. We go left, we go right, and we have to live with those choices. In some alternate universe, there's a John Swartz with a goatee, right? Like Dark Mr. Spock, who's living high on the hog right now on his Nvidia.
Well, I know who that
stock
person is,
profits.
because I know who that person is, because I referred him to the job because he had 2 young kids. So I do feel good about that, at least.
I mean, if it makes you feel any
Yeah,
better, you should
sure.
just sell the stock at the right time, because this sort of reminds me of Cisco in '98, right? And when I joined Cisco, we can say that every packet on the internet goes through our sheet metal. So drop the mic, walk in, and sell firewalls. just whatever, right? And that lasts for a while, and it's inevitable. And it's, Cisco's. I was there for the let's buy half of Silicon Valley, pave it, put up new buildings, and all match, and it was wonderful. And 27 years later, will Nvidia still be where it is today? It's theirs to win or lose, but this is their sweet spot. Yeah.
I think it reminds me of Steve Jobs with Apple. I think really what we're buying is the cult of personality. And Jensen's come in and he talks quite a bit on social media about his background and how he started. And he talks about his, not so very humble beginnings and how it's built him to grow this essential company. So he takes you on this really long ride where you feel like you know him and so you trust him. And I think most of what I see, if we think about Elon Musk, we think about Steve Jobs, they had to sell an idea. They had to actually sell you a dream. And then they had the other job of making it come true. And I think he's making it come true. But I think we have to see when he's talking what he sees. And it requires a little delusion, or it requires you to have some sort of foresight. And ultimately, I feel like NVIDIA's done a great job in branding. I think NVIDIA's done a tremendous job in creating relationships and telling stories and creating a narrative where you feel like you want to go along the journey. And unlike John, you don't want to miss out. So literally, I'm excited about what NVIDIA does next, but I know they'll keep surprising us because they really do want that sort of closed ecosystem situation that Apple created. And unfortunately, the Apples of the world, most recently, there was an article that they're falling behind. We're not getting these new, innovative, completely different products. Every time we see another phone, you're like, oh, the camera's a little bit better. Oh, we've got one more app. So
Well, it's like,
it's
where is
important
Cisco
to
now,
keep that in
right?
mind.
Hey, I was going to, that's a really good, good comparison between Jobs and Jensen, because Jensen's been around a long time, and Jobs went through his wilderness era where he was at Next and it was kind of largely ignored, and he came back and re-sparked.
Bigger and better.
But I don't
Then they
know if
did
there
better.
will ever be another reality distortion field equivalent to Steve Jobs. You remember that term? Where he could paint this future to make you believe it.
You know what? But let me bring this full circle and we'll take a break. That's, I think, a key to Microsoft's resurgence is, when Bill Gates passed the baton to Ballmer. And Ballmer was a great administrator. He grew the company. He made a lot of money for their shareholders. But I don't know if anyone called him truly a visionary in the sense that Bill Gates was. But Satya seems to be. And so that's the key when we look. Tim Cook is the Ballmer.
Yes, exactly.
To Jobs Gates.
Well, put it this
But
way,
Apple needs.
I mean, Satya's many things he said that we repeat, and one of them is every business is a software business. That he didn't originate that, but he really popularized.
But he also said SaaS is dead, and Satya is a visionary leader, not an administrator. Jobs was visionary. Jensen's visionary. Are you visionary? Let's take a break here at Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and let's talk a little cybersecurity dysfunction. Imagine that. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey everyone, we're back here at Techstrong Gang. All right, we did our AI, our mandatory AI for the day as it seems. Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity. Unfortunately, maybe a little dysfunction in cybersecurity. The Linux Foundation and their OpenSSF and everything, they recently shared a framework for building effective cybersecurity teams. I don't know, Jules, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this Linux Foundation framework, but you've done enough cybersecurity and worked and built teams. What do you think?
So I think it furthers what NICE did several years ago. And what I like about what Linux Foundation did is that they've added AI engineers, solution architects. And so they've moved from the traditional security architect, security analyst, security engineer roles that we initially started this industry with. What I like also that Linux Foundation has done is in collaboration with OpenSSF, they're very heavily focused on how to integrate security into DevOps, looking much more closely at the gaps between what the skills of the people in the industry now and where we need them to be in order for them to be effective. If we talk about this issue with AI, I think the problem is that getting people upskilled, trained, and ready has taken so many dollars, and we don't have much to show for it. So what they built out is a cybersecurity skills framework that can be integrated into certain technologies. It can be used for a career road mapping inside organizations, and it's referenceable so that companies of all different sizes have the ability to understand who they have in their on their teams, what skill sets they'll require, and then also to build out long term the kinds of people they need in the organization across the board. And so I like it. I will tell you, I'm rarely ever impressed with security frameworks. I'll just be honest there. But I admire the people who see the problem and immediately come up with a solution. And so I was happy to see it.
My ball's on, right? And I'm glad to see that at the end because, if you're watching out there and you're part of these conversations with me, yes, I hear what you're saying. Maybe it's not perfect. However, as we're talking about in the last block, there are these large communications entities out there. In this context, the Linux Foundation is a great organization with great folks working in it. Some of them have put this together. I haven't looked at it as closely as Jules has, but I scanned through it. It makes logical sense. Is it missing things? Yes. Fraud? Yes. Let's be quiet. Let's take off, on a different topic right now. We're talking about demographics and millions and hundreds of millions of people. How do we address this endless issue of training, right? So I'm encouraged to see a significant, reputable organization like this advancing this topic. And like you say, Jules, adding some of the current things to it, not getting stagnated. And, we do need to continue to move to have, just like we're talking about the last block, it's better when it's not just single power blocks or, a handful, for the insiders in the industry who all debate the fine points with each other. That's how we will address this, not by having the Linux Foundation or any federal government finally say it, having multiple sources of truth that will continue to resonate with each other.
So, with age, sometimes comes wisdom, sometimes comes senility. But here's where I am with looking at frameworks like this and how to better organize our cybersecurity stack, if you will. I don't want to call it a silo. I think for a long time within cybersecurity, we spent a lot of time navel gazing about how to organize your cybersecurity team. What was the role of the CISO? What was the security architect? Do I need, a guy who's sitting at the moat door, the castle door over the moat, right? So that the big honking box watcher, let's call it, right? Sitting in the SOC, watching my firewall and my IPS systems and UTMs and all that. Then I had another guy for vulnerability. Then we had another part of the team for AppSec, and we had, web app firewalls. And as we moved to the cloud, we had cloud security engineers and identity people. And these were all mumbled jumbled as part of our security team, often with people wearing multiple hats. Well, I think we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years in sorting that out. I hope we've sorted that out. But then we also realized that in order for us to be effective, we need dotted lines, liaisons, champions. Jules, as you mentioned, in the DevOps team, in the developer team, in the network team, which was always there, right? But in the platform engineering space, in the SRE teams, in the business teams. In the business teams, how do we roll out security education to the sales guy who's clicking on links, right? So this is where I applaud the Linux Foundation in that they appear to embrace a new vision of what the cybersecurity team is. And maybe there's still that inner core that are cyber, cyber times 3. But there's also people who aren't full-time cyber people, but yet play a vital role in an organization's cybersecurity.
The best talent that I've ever identified at my company and in other companies are not in security now. They have a unique perspective that they bring to bear to solve security problems. And what I'm finding is that leaders have to be good at building teams. And oftentimes, I mean, even as a woman, I think I like to refer to sports teams because I'm an Go Eagles fan. But you can't have a team full of quarterbacks.
Time
You
out. A
need
Philadelphia Eagles fan
yes, I went
in
to Temple.
Ohio?
Temple Law. I went to
Oh,
Temple
Temple.
Law.
All right. I'll
You
give it to
cannot
you
you
then.
can't come out of Philadelphia without being an Eagles fan. It is illegal. Just like go OSU. So the OSU. So ultimately the idea is how do we get different kinds of people together to solve critical problems? And why I laugh at sort of these frameworks is we did not develop an AI framework before we developed the AI. Like AI has come, let's just say, after security, but they figured out how to get it out the door, make it effective, make it usable. We're still debating that in security. Why is that? Because sometimes I think we overthink it. We're trying too hard to make it perfect and we're gatekeeping who can do it. And I'll be honest, I am a communications person who was in sales for 20 years with a law degree. There is nothing that said I would get into cybersecurity, but I'm damn good at it. And it's because there are other correlating skill sets that I have that never make it into the framework. I understand business. I have good presentation skills. I can write. I can read. I can present. Those skills are never in the framework. And so we have a bunch of very technical people who then minimize the importance of uh, good writers and GRC people over and over again. So I think that it's a great start. I think what's missing is we need the other business skills to correlate some of this. And then we need to keep it dynamically adjusting, not just written on paper and then we live with it.
Amen. Amen. As someone who, like you, also JD degree, no cybersecurity formal training, I agree with you. Mitch?
Here. Amen. Stand up and cheer. What can I do to help you, Jules? But I think that was spot on.
Well, I think this topic is a perfect litmus screen. We can keep putting this into the internet, and seeing what color it changes, see what the maturity level we're at. Security and training, right? We've been through this from we need to have these perfect security people, in charge of our security, at that point, right? And on the training side, we need to train every person on earth not to click on things. Look at it. Find it at an early maturity level. We just had our first conversation ever on the topic, and that took a decade or 3, right? Now we're, to the point of this segment. We have organizations like the Linux Foundation that are embedding a lot of these things that we're saying, right? And this business processes, security is not a place and it's not a whip. It's a function of integrating this entire thing into our business and life structure. And we take everything we talked about in this episode, right, from AI, where it's still high phase. It's opportunity and scary and so forth. We don't know what we're going to have done to address the downsides yet. I don't expect, frankly, we'll see. My age, I might live to see the end of that. This will take us some time. We're somewhere down the path, and training and security is a perfect indication of how far we are. And
I don't know if you know this, but here, I'm at Microsoft Build, and they're getting ready for the next keynote. They heard both you, Jules, and Chris talking. They're doing the wave around the audience. It's amazing to see. They're like going to church. It's a revival going on here.
It's all good. It's all good. Fly, Jules, fly. All right. Hey, by the way, This Linux Foundation story you can get on Security Boulevard. The Nvidia platform is up on Techstrong.ai, and Microsoft Agentic AI Mojo is also on Techstrong AI. I'd like to mention that in there. Whether you're watching this live on, well, it's recorded, but whether you're watching this Wednesday morning or as a podcast or on demand on Techstrong.tv, YouTube channel Techstrong TV, or the Techstrong TV OTT channel on Amazon, Apple, Roku, iOS, Android. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Gang. As usual, we've got a full, if you are watching this Wednesday morning, we've got a full Techstrong TV schedule coming at you right after. Stay tuned for that. But until tomorrow, Mitchell, John, Chris, and Jules Okafor, thanks for joining us today. You've just watched Techstrong Gang. We're out.